welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who went from caddying and teaching yoga to building what could be the largest mortgage operation in his entire city. And he's doing it with 4 kids at home and a brand new branch office just opening its doors last week, I believe. He is someone who's always believed that if you're going to do something, you might as well do it as well as you possibly can. Alex Turner, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thanks a lot, Connor. It's great to be here. Very excited for today. And yeah, looking forward to this.
Absolutely, man. Well, it's been great getting to know you and just kind of learning a little bit about your background and what you've got going on in your city and all that's happening around you. Like, you're a very exciting originator to know these days because of the growth that's happening in your world and some of the things that you're implementing. And so I'm excited to get into that with you. Let's start here though. So you graduated college, moved to a city where no one knew you, got your real estate license, and that didn't work out so hot, right? And so then you spent a few years caddying, teaching yoga, then get into mortgage. What was going through your head during that stretch, and what would you say you learned from it? What were some of the biggest lessons there?
Yeah, I feel like I was so kind of lost after college. I had no idea. I studied public health, I was just kind of into like nutrition at that point in my life. So finished up college, had no idea what I wanted to do, and was just kind of lost for a little bit. And so, yeah, she was my fiance at the time, my now wife. We moved to Louisville and didn't know what I was going to do. So at some point, I somehow became interested in becoming a real estate agent and did all the classes, took the test, all that. I had no idea it was a sales position. I thought it was like you work at a real estate company, they give you the buyers to work with, and then you go and help them buy a home or sell a home or whatever. And so, yeah, it was a pretty rude awakening. I remember going in to interview with one of the bigger real estate companies in Louisville. It's called Simonin. And, it was like half an hour interview. And then we get to the end and they're like, so do you want to join? I'm like, it's that easy? You guys will just take me? So yeah, that was kind of funny. But yeah, it didn't really work out. Fell flat on my face. I was in Louisville, new city, was 23 years old, had no confidence, no just sales ability of any sort. I didn't know what that meant. And so, yeah, I just kind of grinded. I was, caddying, teaching yoga, driving for Lyft for, a couple of years, just like making ends meet. And then, at some point it was time to kind of grow up, had a baby, and it was like, okay, I have to pick something. And I always knew like I am not a guy that's going to be good with 9 to 5 salary, hourly pay, whatever. Like I need to be incentivized to work harder. And so, it ended up the sales world was really good for me. And when I was 25, I had a friend that was in the mortgage business. I was seeing what he was doing, how much money he was making. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. I know now I'm going into this knowing it's a sales position, and I'm going to just commit this time and do what it takes to get it done, build the business, and be able to have a career in this field.
Yeah. So what did like that switch flipping mean for you? Like going from not really thinking of it as a sales position into now, okay, I got to go out and sell myself every day. Like, what habits did you have to form? What were some of the things that really changed for you the second time around when you were, getting into mortgage?
Remember that first year was just so uncomfortable, always, every day, just in a constant state of just discomfort. Um, but it was having a baby and realizing like I gotta commit to something. I gotta do something. So it was just that first year definitely was a grind, but got through it and learned the types of things I needed to be doing, daily habits. Obviously wasn't great in that first year, but just recognizing like I have to get out, I have to be okay setting meetings and going and meeting someone I've never met before. That was like really hard for me in the beginning. And I remember just absolutely botching, some of those meetings the first year. But it just, I realized I have to be okay with messing up. And, in my whole life, I played golf in college, and you got to be willing to fail if you're ever going to succeed. And, just like me reteaching myself that, but with the mortgage business, like you're going to fuck up, you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be how you envision it. And you just have to be 100% okay with that.
Yeah, totally. I think some of the, one of the quotes that really like changed my perspective on just success is, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically, some of the most successful people have really failed more than anyone
Yeah.
else, right? Like
Well,
they've been willing to take the chances. They take immediate action. They make a decision and then stick with it for an extended period of time to make sure, it's either a good or a bad idea. But they move on things, right? They take action and they're not afraid of what the failure might be at the end of it because they'll learn from it.
yeah,
And if you've failed the most, the odds are you've probably also had the most success along the
sure.
way too. So now as you kind of got into your career, 2020, 21 coming along, like you ride the refinance wave a little bit, closed about 25 million those 2 years, thought, things were great, right? And then looked at the pipeline, realized it was 90% refi. When you had that moment, like of clarity and sort of realize what was really happening, how quickly did you start to adjust and change and adapt for the future?
Yeah, so those years I was with a bank, and I'd started with a brokerage and moved to a bank because that was the idea. I want to get more people just walking through the door as I'm trying to build my business here. And yeah, I mean, it was just, doing 25 million those 2 years, I thought I was the shit. I was like, I'm good at this. This is going to be a great career for me, and yeah, at some point realized, when the talk of rates started happening, going up, I was like looking at my pipeline, and it's like, yeah, so much of my business is refi. And when rates go up 2, 3%, these aren't going to be here anymore. And I'm just going to have, the small amount of purchase business that I have. So I was pretty quick on it. Like I was a good 6 to 8 months ahead of it. Before rates went up, like I made the switch to a new company, Interlink, who I'm with now, a good 6 to 8 months before rates actually started going up. I saw the writing on the wall, and I was just like, man, I'm at a bank, and it's hard to build trust with realtors and referral
Mhm.
partners being here at the bank, just because so many of those purchase transactions I had, and a lot of it was like my fault, for not knowing the guidelines and all that, very well yet. But also just it's kind of just a known thing, banks are a little tougher on borrowers with qualification and overlays and all that they have. So I was like, if I'm gonna make a career out of this and become a purchase lender, I need to be in a spot where it is known for the best customer service and communication, and basically just catering to referral partners like realtors and being their best friend and being exactly what they want. So it was just like, if I was a realtor, what kind of company would I want my loan officer to be with? And so that was kind of the frame of mind I took. And so interviewed with several companies and met my boss at Interlink, and he was just saying he was speaking my language. Like everything I was looking for is like, that's what we do. And we just elite processing, elite underwriting, elite communication, just freeing me up, like taking a lot of the work off my plate as far as like getting a deal processed and closed so that I could go and focus more on selling and, building more business to then bring in the door. So yeah, it was a pretty big transition. And it, after joining Interlink, it took a while, for me to figure out this model. It's a totally different model. It's 100% outside sales, like go get the business and bring it here type thing. But yeah, fortunately stuck to it and figured it out. And now I couldn't be happier.
Well, I love that you were focused on, the client experience and what would the company or what company would I want to work with if I were a realtor, and sort of frame things in that way. And I think that's a great question that a lot of anyone who's listening should really ask themselves, because clearly what you have found is alignment and, an alignment of values that allows you to operate in a way that you're confident, that you have the support that you need, that you're operating within a culture that believes what you believe. And when you're in that alignment, I think professionally in general, you're going to be more successful than if you're out of alignment and you feel sort of like a fraud or a phony, or you're representing something that you don't fully believe in. So I love that you were thoughtful about that and really prioritized the alignment piece to make sure that you were at the right place. And I just think that's really smart. So you were in Louisville, you moved to Evansville, and one of the things that we talked about is, you kind of recognize the contrast in terms of just the level of competition between the markets. Like Louisville is a little more populated, a little more competitive, more lenders, more realtors, kind of in that market. Is that something that you recognized and moved towards, like strategically, meaning like, hey, Evansville's got less competition, I should be there? Or is that more of something that like you just sort of realized after kind of getting into the grind and getting up and going professionally?
No, yeah, that was totally unexpected, a complete happy accident there. We were moving back to Evansville. That's our hometown. Just moving back there to be closer to family. We had 2 kids at the time. We're planning on more kids. We're like, if we're gonna keep having all these kids, then we need help badly. So it's been one of the best personal decisions we've made ever, as far as to help. We have 4 kids now, but also one of the best business decisions, and wasn't on purpose. It was totally an accident. Louisville was so saturated with loan officers and loan companies just like us. Interlink Mortgage, we're a retail mortgage company. We are highly focused on great customer service and communication. That's what we sell. Like when I go out and meet agents, I'm selling customer service. I'm not selling rates or products or any of that stuff. Like I go out and I sell customer service, and there's just not a lot of companies like us in Evansville, not a lot of loan officers, I don't think, with this mindset that I have. So yeah, it's just been like shooting fish in a barrel. Like
Yeah.
it's coming from that Louisville environment where it's hyper competitive and really hard to build relationships. And then coming here, I mean, it's like night and day.
That's great. And when you've got the hometown advantage, right? Like
That's
you're
it.
from the area, which is that never hurts, especially if we're talking about kind of a smaller area. And hopefully you still know friends and family members that are still in town and all that, which is always
Yeah.
really cool. And something that you made a comment about was that you want your pre-approval letter to mean as much as cash. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you're talking about in terms of customer service and that mentality. That's a bold statement, but how do you build a reputation around that with agents, and what does that actually kind of cost you in terms of time and the energy
Yeah.
that it takes to protect that?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, it's not ever going to be as good as cash. There's an appraisal that's got to get done, different things outside of my control. Even if I do everything perfectly, because of the buyer using financing, it still might not work out. But yeah, I want it to mean as close to cash as possible. When I send a listing agent a pre-approval or buyer's agent a pre-approval, I want them to know, okay, this file's been vetted. If I have a pre-approval from Interlink, then I am extremely confident it's going to close, versus like, some big online lender, you get a pre-approval from them and you're like, I don't know, like maybe go talk to my guy, Alex, just so we can be sure. So yeah, it definitely takes time. I would say I probably spend more time on a pre-approval than the average loan officer, but that ends up saving a lot of time on the back end with my processing team, not having to like figure out major issues that are all things that I can catch up front. So I'm big on just like I'm really diligent with income. Like if someone's variable income, like you're going to have to send me pay stubs. I need to see what you made in 24 and 25, what's your average overtime over these 2 years. So it can definitely take more time. But like I said, I feel like it ultimately helps save time, and just, I get to keep that reputation of like, if Alex sends me a pre-approval, it's good. We're not going to have silly things pop up to kill our deal that could have easily been figured out up front. And it's, it's about my buyer very much so. Like, I don't, early in my career, I pre-approved someone for more than what they should have been pre-approved for. And we were a couple weeks into the process, and I ended up, they had paid for inspections and all that. And I ended up having to call them and tell them, look, sorry, I messed up. I, did not calculate your income correct. You just cannot qualify for this much. And I remember just, that was the worst feeling. And calling the agent too that referred them my way, being like, man, I messed up. This was totally my fault. I just, I did not look at it correctly. And that has stuck with me ever since, that feeling. And so it's a nightmare for me to do something like that, pre-approve someone or over pre-approve someone and then not ultimately be able to get the deal done. It just makes you look really bad. Unfortunately, I was able to
Yeah.
maintain that relationship with that realtor that sent him my way. I think just owning up to it meant a lot to him. And
Right.
I think
That's a huge lesson right there, right?
I always think that's the best way to be.
Absolutely.
Just be honest and, admit to your faults. Like, no one's perfect. We're all going to mess up, and I will still mess up. Like, there's still going to be files every year that I probably missed something and probably could have figured that out up front, and I don't. But as much as I can, I'm trying to make sure that I am doing everything within my power on the pre-approval process to make sure if I say yes, this person can qualify, then we are going to be able to close that deal.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is reminding me a lot of what a previous guest on the show, Michael Harrington, had to say about like he's a recreational pilot, and there's a checklist of things that you have to check before you get up in the air. So you got your pre-flight checklist, and if you check all of those things out and everything's good, the odds of there being a an emergency that happens while you're in the air are dramatically lower, right? So, because on the flip side of that pre-flight checklist is the emergency checklist, where if you got the wing catches fire or the engine goes out, here's what you do in those scenarios. But those scenarios, the likelihood of those go way down if you're
Yeah.
checking everything around and outside the plane and inside the plane before you even get off the ground. So I think it's smart. Like, you take your time, you make sure your due diligence is done so that you're not dealing with emergencies at the, last minute or these moments that might have been avoided if you'd, done everything thoroughly in the beginning. And you've got a really great like system that's built around an assistant that handles some of the intake and then a processor who is like essentially losing sleep over files that they consider to be like their own. So how did you find people like this? Because that's great support to have. And what made you kind of realize that, hey, these were the right people for the job?
Honestly, I looked into them. They were with the Louisville branch, and they're still on my team now that I'm in Evansville. But yeah, I had no idea. There's definitely levels to this. And like, I feel like my back end processing team, all that, like, they perform at such a high level and they care so much. And everybody in my, branch, it's kind of like right now, Louisville and Evansville are kind of like together as a branch, but everybody's incentivized to close more deals. And I think that is the best way to structure this business, is to incentivize everyone. Like, my head processor, he's making a lot of money, like, because he will close a ton of deals, and he will work at PM on Friday. He'll just keep working if we need to in order to get the job done. He works every single weekend. He's usually putting in 2 or 3 hours. Like, I tell the guy to like take a break, and it's just, he is so OCD and he's such a workaholic. Like, he enjoys it. I think he enjoys like stressing himself the hell out over, these files, but it kills. Like, if there's ever a file that I submit that he can't close, it kills him. Like, he hates it. It's like a terrible feeling for him. And so, yeah, the value they bring to me is, it's so hard to think about going anywhere else, because I don't know who I'd be working with. And I already know, I feel like I've got the best of the best behind me. And I always tell people, like, a loan officer is very important. It's a very important position. You got to have a good communicator, someone great with customer service, someone good with pre-approvals and all that. But who's behind the loan officer, I feel like is so much more important when it comes to actually getting deals closed. Like you need really talented people.
And at your company, you even mentioned that there's a pretty strong role model for that, and kind of a something that you're working towards, where there's another producer that, his team changes the Encompass password so that they can't get into the file, which
Right.
I think is next level brilliant move, right? How close are you to that, and what would have to be true for you to let go of like that much control?
I think, I mean, I'm probably years away from that at this point. We're going to have to add some people to help, which we're actively looking at doing right now. We've got, someone we're in pretty serious talks with. Another loan partner, Ben, my assistant. I call him an assistant just because I feel like that makes more sense to clients, but I guess he'd be considered a loan partner, like an LP. We're going to look at adding another loan partner, and Ben might, transition to more like an LP2 position, at least in my head. I mean, this is how I think of it. And then get like another LP1, someone that's good with just the intake, like getting people to submit applications, following up, doing that kind of stuff. And then LP2 in my mind is like someone who can do the pre approvals for me, like figure out how to, what's the income, where's the down payment coming from, figuring all that stuff out, and then just giving it to me on a platter and just be like, here you go. Just call them and have the 20-minute pre-approval conversation with them. And then I'm done with it until they go under contract. But yeah, Rory in my company, he's the one you were talking about. Like he is, I mean, he's just a beast doing 80 mil a year, like has a 4 or 5 person team around him that just helps him do everything. And yeah, they will literally lock him out of his Encompass so he can't get in there. Um, they're just, he's got such a great support system around him. I'm sure that took him a while to build, but that is definitely my goal. Like I'm pretty good at sales and communication. And that's kind of, I want my job to be that, not looking at Encompass all day and trying to figure files out. Because if I can spend more time entertaining and networking and all that, then I'm just going to be able to bring that much more through the door. I feel like I've hit like a ceiling right now with the current help that we have. I don't, unless I'm going to start working 60, 70 hours a week, I don't think I can keep going. So
Right.
definitely at a point where, yeah, just need more help and want to make sure I get that so I can maintain the same level of customer service. Because the last thing I want is for agents to be sending me business and then I'm not holding up to that same level of customer service and communication. And then they're just like, well, I guess Alex is too busy for us now. I'm going to have to go find somebody else.
Right. Well, and that's the kind of glass ceiling that I see a lot of loan officers run into. And we were talking about this a little bit before we even started recording, where it's not unrealistic to go from 6 to 7 loans a month to 10 to 12 loans a month. Sometimes it's really just as simple as adding a little bit more help to the team, but the loan officer has to be willing to let go of some of that work and trust others and delegate. And something that I've observed through the show is that the top producers who've been on here have been the best delegators. They're the people that are the most willing to say, you take this, you take that, I'm going to stay right here in my lane and do these things that I'm really good at, and only those things. And I might get involved in special scenarios, or with this emergency that might pop up or that. But for the most part, you own your job and I'll own mine, and then we'll all just do great work together. And so that struggle, I think, for a lot of loan officers to be willing to make that hire, to hand off that work. It's difficult, but I love that you're like seem very open to it, because I think that speaks to, and you've got a good role model there that's kind of showing the way. And a lot of loan officers lack that too. They're not seeing someone do it or model it that way in front of them, and so they're not really trusting that it could even work.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know you'd like to get to where you're playing golf a few times a week, and and just
Spend my
talking
time
with
doing
clients,
that.
doing the consultation, right? All that stuff. So I think that's awesome, man. Well, listen, I think we've had, a great conversation, and I want to give you an opportunity before we say goodbye, really just to say what might be on your mind. I mean, I know I've asked you a lot of questions. I don't know if you've been able to say, talk about everything that you'd like to share on the show today. So I want to give you an open forum, just sort of let you speak your mind, say whatever it is that you might want to say. And maybe it's nothing, but if there's anything that you'd want to share with a listener today that you think might be important, or a referral partner that might be listening, or a client for that matter, anything that you'd want to get off your chest.
I think biggest thing for me in the last year or two in building my business and becoming more successful is focusing on finding people that see value in what I do and what I offer. And so, like, for a new loan officer, that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give and think of is just don't, like, if people are not seeing your value and what you bring to the table, don't worry about them. Like, you can't please everyone, but there are definitely going to be people out there that appreciate you and see your value, and those are the people to invest your time in. Like, I sell customer service and communication, like I said, and there, are a good amount of agents that really value that, and they know how important that is. And there's a lot that just, like, they don't get it. Maybe they're part-time or just not that serious of an agent, and they don't see the value in, like, having the loan officer's cell phone number and being able to pick up and call them on a weekend if needed, if there's an issue that pops up. And so for those people, I just don't worry about them. I focus on the ones that actually see my value and appreciate me. And I feel like that shift in mindset has been one of the biggest contributors to my success here in the last couple of years. Getting to be a, 20, $30 million producer is just focusing on the people that care about what I offer.
Yeah, I love that. That is incredible advice. There's a term for it that I learned through the book Go for Stupid by Steve Sims. Highly recommend, but it's you control the door. Like, you are in control of who gets into your business and who you keep out. You are kind of the bouncer of it all.
Yeah,
And so, something that I think is really important to keep in mind is, just controlling that sphere of influence and the people that you spend your time with, because like they say, you become the average of the 5 to 10 people that you spend the most time with, and people who see your value, that's who you need to be around, and you need to see their value too,
yeah.
right? So Alex, I love that as a kind of a parting word. I think you're doing a lot of great things, and really excited for what the future is going to hold for you. Congrats on the recent grand
Thank you.
opening and all the success that you're having there in Evansville, and just thanks for joining me on the lowdown, man.
Of course, man. Yeah. Thanks a lot for having me on here. This has been awesome. Like I said, I was really looking forward to this. So this has been great, man. You're doing awesome
Awesome,
things,
man.
Connor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, best of luck to you.
All right, man. You too. Take it easy.